Hello and welcome to this ecommotors podcast. What are we calling this ecommotors podcast? We're calling it the D.O.G Podcast. And don't click away just now. Let's explain why we're calling it the D.O.G Podcast. D.O.G is D.O.G, Drive Online Growth. Drive Online Growth is the strapline for ecommotors, and that's why we're calling it the D.O.G Podcast. So why should you care about this podcast? Well, it's all about scaling up your aftermarket e-commerce. So if you don't want to scale up your aftermarket e-commerce, if you don't want to grow your online aftermarket sales and drive up your online aftermarket profitability, then this podcast is not for you. Click away now. All right, let's get started. This is the first podcast in the series, and I'm going to introduce to you my colleague, Andrew Rowson. Andrew, welcome, and please do tell us as much as you'd like to share about yourself.
Oh my God, and this is only going to be 15 minutes, you said. But first of all, I want to say that I did not come up with the acronym D.O.G. It was someone far more intelligent and brainier, i.e. Paul, than me, that came up with that little rhyme there. But I think it is very apt, absolutely. So my name is Andrew Rowson, and I have been immersed in automotive for over 20 years. And not just automotive, but e-commerce as well. And I've learned a few things during that time. I'm hoping I'm going to give you my wisdoms, my thoughts during the next 5.5 hours of this podcast. 15 minutes of this podcast. So do you want to know more about Paul? Do you really want to know more about Paul? Well, he's going to tell you anyway. So Paul, do you want to introduce yourself? Why are you on this podcast?
Well, I'm on this podcast, Andrew, to facilitate your expertise and your knowledge. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Actually, let me talk...
Stop. Was that a compliment there?
To who?
To me. To facilitate my knowledge and my...
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is being recorded because Paul, in our normal day-to-day life, does not say that to me. It's an emotional moment, this is, for both of us.
Well, Andrew, you just enjoy it, because if you don't provide us with some content going forward, those compliments will be few and far between.
Oh, okay. The baton all then. Okay, Paul, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm going to take a step back and explain about ecommotors. So ecommotors is a joint venture between two very established organizations. eMotive Online is a managed services provider to the aftermarket industry, and in fact to other industries within the multi-channel e-commerce space. Volo Commerce is a technology provider to the aftermarket e-commerce space, and indeed to a lot of other industries as well. Together, we are ecommotors, providing a full wraparound service for our aftermarket online sellers. I run Volo, and Andrew runs eMotive, and together we are ecommotors.
I just want to say, we had many, many months of brainstorming and thinking about how we're going to come up with a name of this joint venture, didn't we, Paul?
We did indeed.
And you had far more intelligent people than Paul and I all locked in a room for nearly a week, and all we could come up with ecommotors. But we thought, actually, it says what it does on the tin, doesn't it, really? So I thought it was quite apt. But if you like the idea, it was solely mine. If you don't, it was definitely Paul's idea. So I just wanted to point that out at an early stage of this podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. So yes, indeed, it's ecommotors. So that's double M in the middle, ecommotors.com. And we have a free health check. So please do go to the ecommotors.com homepage and you'll see the orange button. Get a free health check. You can find us on ecommotors.com on the web. Find us on YouTube. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook. Find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. And you can find us in person at Automechanica UK at the NEC in Birmingham, June 6th through 8th, as the Americans would say, We are in stand S for sugar or S for stand 102. We'd really love to see you there.
And I'd like to say on the 5th podcast, if you can wait it out for that long, Paul will be introducing our signature tune for ecommotors. That is something that is going to be getting so many downloads. Paul's going to be just a household name by the end of it.
Andrew, thank you for over-promising so that ultimately I may indeed.
Well, I do want to keep sales, but anyway.
All right, let's get down to some serious content. Andrew, tell us what's going on in aftermarket e-commerce. Is anything going on in e-commerce? Because I'm a subscriber to various different publications in the aftermarket trade. I very rarely come across the words e-commerce or online. So can you share for us what is going on in aftermarket e-commerce right now?
I'm very worried that you've just said that. Working within e-commerce and aftermarket, you very rarely come across it, Paul. I am really worried that you're actually doing your day job. Are you working in Greg's, are you? Or are you doing something totally different? But I get your point, I think. I think what you're saying is that it's kind of a secret. People don't like to talk about it. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I think when you look at the way the trade presents itself, it is a very traditional trade. Has a traditional distribution routes, and it's almost as if the words e-commerce and online are dirty words. We don't want to use those. We don't want to give away the fact that we might be looking at these new distribution channels because we don't want to, in inverted commas, offend or annoy our traditional distribution partners. So that's my view. What do you think?
I think that there is a lot of tradition with the automotive category. So if we're talking about, let's talk about the OEMs. This is the motor manufacturers. They had their routes to market, and that hasn't really changed much over 100 years. They had the dealer networks. Back in the day, you bought a car from a dealer, you bought parts from a service, or you got your car repaired from a service center. And that hasn't really changed too much. However, in the aftermarket, which, those are parts that are made for those vehicles, but they haven't got the Ford, the VW, the Nissan badge on there. And that's the aftermarket. They've embraced it a little bit more. And you've got a lot of resellers, some entrepreneur businesses that have built businesses from small shops to really massive online entities. And I can give you a list of around about 5 or 6 that we've worked with. And these guys kind of grasped the nettle, as my father would say, and ran with it. And they've really, there's 6-7 figure some businesses online. So I think they're more flexible than the bigger corporations that have to really balance every aspect and understand every aspect of whether online is going to help them or going to disrupt them, if that makes sense, from that point of view. And times change as well. Do you remember an event that happened in the world a few years ago?
Yes, the pandemic, of course. Yes, remember it well.
Yes. You were locked up in, underneath the stairs for 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 years, weren't you? Like Harry Potter, weren't you? And they wouldn't let you out. And actually, if this was a video podcast, you'd actually say that if Paul took off his baseball cap, because he is down, actually, Paul is, he listens to Radio 1, he wears a baseball cap, he's really hip and trendy. You'd see his scar on his forehead like Harry Potter. Absolutely. So he was actually locked up under the stairs for 2 years. And the reason I'm going off with this tangent, it actually changed everything. So the bricks and mortar couldn't sell, You couldn't, in the US, automotive was seen as an essential service, and it was seen in parts of the UK as essential service as well. But people couldn't leave their houses to get their car service. They couldn't leave their houses to buy things from bricks and mortar. So that's when our line took off. And I think people are looking at things in a different light after COVID, because we don't know if another pandemic's going to hit us again. We don't know if, the war is going to affect us that's in Ukraine. So we have to kind of spread the risk. And I think online is enabling that spreading of the risk as well. Would you say that's a good view of it, Paul?
I think so, Andrew. I think that's a very good summation. So you are listening to the ecommotors D.O.G Podcast. We are the little and large of aftermarket e-commerce. I'm Paul, and this is Andrew. I am little.
That's the dog. That's the dog.
Thank you, Andrew. I am little, and Andrew is not little. And something else we have in common. We are both.
Paul. What are you trying to say? Oh my God.
We are both from the Midlands. And if you're involved in aftermarket e-commerce, you'll know you really have to be from the Midlands to be involved in the aftermarket industry. I'm from Stafford, Andrew's from Nuneaton, so we both qualify as being Midlands men.
I don't know whether I want to be called that.
Well, then I can simply edit it out of the podcast.
Okay.
Have one of my more experienced production experts do the very same. Now, I've just asked Andrew what's happening in e-commerce, and he mentioned Greggs the Bakers. He did mention Harry Potter, the movie, of course. Please do shop at those establishments. Please do buy those products. We do not take any copyright benefit whatsoever from them. And of course, other bakeries and other films are available for your consumption.
Oh, you're so PC, Paul. You are, absolutely.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. So tell us a little bit more about who the various players in aftermarket e-commerce are. You've touched on that already, but tell us a little bit more. And what are their options? What can they do if they're not already involved in aftermarket e-commerce?
Yes, so the easy ways is looking at marketplaces. So that has a customer base, and their way that they've structured, some of them are structured around the customer journey of buying things online, like a car part. So the biggest ones are eBay and Amazon. Actually, eBay is bigger than Amazon in that list. And the reason why is because the way a consumer buys is different than a way a trade customer buys. And as you well know, if you're immersed in the aftermarket or any car part market, whether it's white labeling or it's OEM or tier 1, they always order by part number, okay? Because they know what they need in order to stock up, or they also know what they need to fit onto a car because they've got it in the service centre or on the ramp at that moment in time. But a consumer doesn't know the part number. Their journey starts with their car, make, model, year, shape, and then they select what they want from there on in. So it's either whatever top of the pile. They probably know some great brands, so they will select based on the brand because they know that brand makes it for the car manufacturer. So there's some alignment there. Or it could be price that's driving them as part of that as well. So, that's kind of, the journey on multi-channel. During this podcast, we'll probably go a little bit more in depth of, the whys and wherefores and how you can embrace that journey. And as a brand, for example, even if you don't sell direct to the consumer, it's important that you do embrace the consumer journey. And we'll spend some time going through a little bit of that in podcast number 432. Anyway, probably number 10. Okay, not that long. You'd have to wait that long. Okay, so your question was, how do you embrace it? So marketplace is the greatest place. 80% of all car parts worldwide are bought on a marketplace if they're bought online. You don't have to spend marketing money on a website. That could be the world's best kept secret if you don't promote it through AdWords, through social media and all that good stuff as well. So, it is a quick win and a quick way to test by embracing those marketplaces. Now, that's something that we do over at ecommotors. We can educate you about, what's out there, what the current trends are, and that gives you an information for you to make that decision of which direction to go as well. Does that answer your question, Paul?
It does indeed, Andrew. It does indeed. So, Andrew, what should players in the aftermarket e-commerce do next? What are their options? Well, you've answered the question what their options are. What should they do next?
So you've got to be informed. You need to understand. Talk to somebody like Paul or myself or one of our colleagues over at ecommotors, and we can actually tell you, understand, what you're currently doing, understand where you want to be, understand your fears. There's a lot of fear. What you don't know, as we always say. So come and talk to us, and then we'll have a conversation. And then if we can help you on that journey, we're there. We're there ready for you to embrace, and we'll hold your hand on that journey. So you don't actually need to staff up or recruit the experience, all that good stuff as well. So as Paul said, just talk to us, reach out to us on one of our media channels. Reach out to Paul. His phone number is, I won't tell you his phone number, but please email us. That's not a problem. We'll embrace that conversation.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So Andrew did suggest that you email us. You can do that via ecommotors.com, or you can send us an email at revup, REVVUP, at ecommotors.com. And also, you can meet with us in person at Automechanica UK, at the NEC, the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham, the capital of the Midlands. You can find us, stand S for sugar, or S for stand, in fact, 102.
And I'd like to say that this podcast was sponsored by the Tourism for Midlands. Thank you very much.
No, in all seriousness, Andrew, why is aftermarket e-commerce broken? Is it broken? What do you think?
Yeah, depends on what side you're looking at. Aftermarket ecommotors. There you go. That was a subliminal slip of the tongue as I was going in. Aftermarket trading has kind of not changed too much over the years. We touched on the motor manufacturers of the way they've sold stuff has been the same through dealers, whether it was a Wild West type shanty back in the 1800s to actually today where it's a big dealership where they sell. And then the aftermarket has been about the same, really. However, I do say there are some localism. So the way they sell in the US is slightly different than the UK, which is slightly different than continental Europe. And the way the parts get to the end user, it's either through a distributor or it's through a garage, or it's all of the above. However, as e-commerce has been building since the early 2000s, that has facilitated a new way of trading. And some parts manufacturers have embraced it. Resellers have embraced it a lot more online. And that means that you can actually not only sell parts, but you can also market your parts, market your brand. And, as consumers, we are people that are looking at our phones day in, day out. We're looking at our laptops. We're sat there looking at a TV screen and our smart TVs and all that good stuff. And unless your brand is on the internet, you're losing those pair of eyes that are looking at that and embracing with you. So I think, is it broken if you're selling through the traditional channels? No, that's not changed. If you're looking to embrace e-commerce channels, you could say it's possibly broken because it's not embracing it as quickly as consumer tech is. Samsung, Apple. I always use this analogy. They sell on every channel and medium going. You don't have Apple saying, oh, well, we're not going to sell on our website because we don't want to upset our B2B, the Dixon Store Group or Best Buy in the US or Vodafone or Verizon. We don't want to upset them. No, they set their stall out from the beginning. We will sell on our website. We've got some great shiny stores on which we're going to sell on. We are also selling marketplaces. We sell also through our distributors as well, and everyone likes that. I think the challenge is change, and no one likes change. We don't like change in our life. Sometimes we're forced to do it. It's the same. No one likes change in that. And it's about embracing that change. So I wouldn't say broken. It's just changing, I think is the word I'd use.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. So it's not broken. Aftermarket e-commerce is not broken, but couldn't you make the argument for those organizations that are already selling online that it's actually disconnected?
I think depending on who you are and for example, what power you have over the supply chain, you could say whether it's disconnected or not. So if I'm a reseller, what do I need in order to sell online? I need to understand where the stock is, what the stock is. I need to have distribution. pick, pack and dispatch, and to go and drop ship, and to understand the tracking number and all that good stuff. Okay. Now, if I don't hold the stock, I then need everyone else, the manufacturers or the distributors, to come to the party by providing that. Sometimes they don't do that. That's where the problem is and the disconnect is, I think. But if you're the brand and you make that decision that you're going to invest into it, then you have a lot more control. But it's a slow-moving machine to actually get that brand online direct, if that makes sense. So I think it's also about investment as well. So, I talk to a lot of different organizations, from big billion-dollar corporations where you've got so many stakeholders involved, and you're talking about 2 years. They want to do something, but they don't quite know what they want to do. And I'm talking online to, 1 or 2 owner businesses that make decisions like that and can move flexible, but do they have access to those parts? That's the other question there. So it's a mixture of different things. But if it was easy and people would be doing it themselves, they wouldn't be asking people like ecommotors to help them on that journey.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. So you're listening to the ecommotors D.O.G Podcast. Thank you, Andrew, for the canine background there. You've already explained to us why it's not necessarily broken, it's not necessarily disconnected, it's just subject to rapid change at the moment. So what are the options for brands, distributors, resellers? Does their brand have to be online if they want to sell? Are there other options? Or what are the different avenues they can go down if they're not currently selling online?
I think the first thing is to understand the options and then understand the capabilities. So one of the things that we do over at ecommotors, we offer what is called a strategic review service. We'll go in, we'll talk to everybody in the business, understand what their thoughts are, understand where the opportunities are online. It could be that, multi-layered automotive manufacturers that cross over from lighting to bearings, to clutches, to all those different parts, that actually it's not right to do all those online, but it's good to do some of that. And that's where the opportunity is. We also understand from a brand point of view, one of the greatest things is to get that brand out there. I have known companies that have actually taken an unknown brand and used Amazon, for example, to actually build a multi-million-pound business off the back of that. And all they're doing is going out, finding some quality items in China, and then they're actually then building a really nice-looking brand around that, and then moving that forward. Now, the manufacturers don't have to do that because they've got a brand. But instead of actually spending... I sat next to last week at a dinner, one of the writers for Cat magazine, which is an automotive magazine. They no longer publish a magazine. It's all online because they've recognized that people don't spend money to put advertising on magazines anymore. They do spend money online with their magazine. However, if you were engaging with eBay and Amazon, utilizing the service that we can offer, manage that for you, then you're putting marketing dollars into something where you've got over 17 million people looking on eBay every month. That's more than a magazine readership. So you've got to look at all those sort of things into the mix of what you can do from that side.
All right, thank you, Andrew. And obviously at ecommotors, we have a vested interest in anticipating where the aftermarket e-commerce industry is going. Do you want to give our audience a little bit of a sense of what we're trying to do as an organization to help our customers connect the dots, to connect their disparate systems and connect their e-commerce?
Yeah, so the reason why we established ecommotors is because we saw needs out there. So it's not just a technology product, and it's not just people in order to drive that product. It's a combination of both. So we want to automate what we can automate. Okay, so that's where the technology comes in, the order flow, the stock updates, the listings, all automate that. But then you need people to drive the content. You need to look at strategy, look at where the advertising can be in order to promote those lines as well. So that's why we formed and we had this collaboration called ecommotors from that side. So just remind the question, Paul. What was the question?
You're sharing, Andrew, as if you didn't have this already embedded in your DNA, but you are sharing with us your vision for ecommotors.
Yeah. So the EA today is changing, and if you're doing the same today as you did last week, you're actually going backwards. Okay. So what is happening? And again, it's very territorial as well. So what is happening in India is different than what's happening in the US and what's happening in Europe. Okay. So we'll eventually have, and I can see it already happening, click and fix. Okay. So you could order something on eBay. You can select an installer in your local area. That item will already be there, will be shipped to that installer. You just ramp up, you get the stuff installed, and it's all done within one transaction. Okay, so that's coming, and that is morphing online, offline, bringing the distribution network on board. But in order to do that, you need to have the parts listed first of all. Okay, you can't just do that like that. You've got to have that establishment, and I think now is an exciting time to get started because all these different innovations are happening. You know, eBay and Amazon have their business offering. So you could already, believe it or not, 25% of clients on eBay are businesses that find it easier to buy on there rather than buying through their traditional channels. So you're missing out if you're not on. You're missing those people out. But that will only increase while the offering is being more tailored. So quantity purchases, discounts, credit terms, all that will come as time goes on as well. So I think now is an exciting time to embrace that. Believe it or not, the UK is groundbreaking. The UK is the second biggest e-commerce territory worldwide, with the US being the first. And we're talking from a dollar spent, I have to say. But, if you look at Europe as a whole, I know the UK is not part of Europe anymore, but, we would still be classed in that territory. The opportunity is twice the size as the US. So, I think there's been challenges with Brexit, but for companies that do have entities in different countries, they can embrace those different localisms and be there and ready because, the UK will be doing click and fit this year, next year. Okay, there's no doubt about that. That'll be out. But then, for example, France will do it 2025, We're all going on the same path, just at different speeds. So it's about being ahead of the curve there in these different territories as well.
Thank you, Andrew. And you touched on listings, and obviously listings are critical. If you don't have your data right, you're not going to get found, you're not going to get bought. And it's not just a case of getting the title right. There's so much more to it than that. And that's further complicated by the part number /K type /MMI code how do I search for it if I'm a consumer type issue. And it's further complicated by the fact that there are millions and millions and millions of products out there. So, Andrew, what should you do to get your data right? What's the answer to the data conundrum?
If we're talking about eBay, Amazon website, you've got to think, let's start where it starts from a consumer point of view, okay? Consumer knows the vehicle they drive. So they will put it to a search, Ford Mondeo 2010, estates, 1.8 horse, 1.8 engine, brake horsepower, 200. They'll use those selections in order to find the part. So all those different methods that you've just mentioned, Paul, they are just tools to facilitate wrapping round that make, model, year, shape lookup. So if it transfers really, really easily into that customer journey, happy days, that's great. So You look at, for example, on eBay. eBay utilize what is called their MVL, Master Vehicle List. And that is a code against the 8-year shape. You can either, if you're listing on eBay, select that manually, but that's a long job. If you're listing 1 or 2 items, absolutely, it's the right way to go. But then if you utilize technology that ecommotors has got, we can do this en masse. We can do this really, really quickly as well. And if we're managing that through our managed services element, then we're actually doing that all for you as well. So just remember, the customer journey is different on the consumer side that is different than on a B2B aspect. And you have to embrace it. You can't change that. You have to embrace it.
And Andrew, finally, before we close the podcast, what should companies do next? Should they get in touch with you? Should they do a Google search? What should they do next?
Okay, so really, you need to understand the internet and e-commerce. If you haven't got a strategy around that, you need to understand it. I'm not saying you do something straight away, but you need to understand it and understand how it fits into your business. I talk to so many businesses saying we don't sell direct to the consumer. We don't, we don't embrace the internet. That's for our resellers to do. It may be so, but if your product, your data set is not tailored around that side, because all your resellers are doing is taking that and then going online and then selling it online, or they're doing it through the other channels they've got access to. So you need to educate yourself. That's really, really important. So we can help you on that journey. Just drop us a note on one of our various social medias that we've got, or just drop us an email over revup@ecommotors.com, double N in the middle. And we can have that conversation. Also, where are we going to be in June, Paul?
Well, I'll tell you, Andrew, we are going to be exhibiting at Automechanica UK at the NEC in Birmingham, the glorious capital of the Midlands, from June the 6th to June the 8th. And you can find us on stand S for Sugar 102.
I was actually talking about our team building meeting in Amsterdam in June. But anyway, we'll be at Automechanica as well. So absolutely we'll be there in June. So come by, have a conversation. Paul will be the smaller one, I'll be the bigger one. We may be wearing a t-shirt saying little and large as well, so you know which one it is. And also click and subscribe. My teenage daughter said I need to say that on a podcast because that's what we have to do. So that's what I'm saying as well.
Thank you, Andrew Rowson of ecommotors. I've been Paul Dilger of ecommotors. As Andrew's daughter says, click and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We have been ecommotors.com, and this has been an Ecommotors D.O.G Podcast. All right, that's a wrap.